All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. This is the regular meeting of the Edina School Board, Monday, March 11th, 2019. If you could do us the pleasure of giving a very brief overview of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. So tonight we have recognition. We have a presentation by Intermediate School District 287. Sandra, Lewandowski, and Regina Neville are here to talk about District 287, the service they provide. You have some consent items, and discussion tonight will be around board meeting dates. And under action, you have preliminary budget approval, which you've had several work sessions on, and also approval of some bonds as well as contracts. And in the information section, we have some background information related to enrollment, some information around contracts, and then follow up on staff recognition. So with that, it's a brief meeting, but substantive.
Great. Thank you very much. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the February 11th work session, the February 11th regular meeting, and the March 4th special and closed meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes to the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the February 11th work session, February 11th regular meeting, and the March 4th special and closed meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. We are quickly on to recognition.
So with that, can I ask
Where's Andy?
Andy Beaton to come forward and
Oh, there you are, hiding.
I hide behind the column.
It's like, where'd he
the
go?
microphone. And you can stand. You can do whatever you want. You can grab it and talk. Let me check.
Ready? You coming up here
Yep,
with me?
go ahead.
Hi, my name's Andy Beaton. I'm the principal at the high school. Pleasure to be here. I don't know if anybody remembers, in 2016, there was a presidential election. It was somewhat contentious, if anybody remembers that. We have some memories of that. Edina High School is not alone in schools in the state of Minnesota, around the country, that had sometimes students that didn't win or lose with grace in that situation. And because of that, and I actually wasn't even at Edina High School when that happened, Mike Pretasky worked with a group of students and developed a group called Mosaic. And there's some of those students that are here in the audience tonight. And they really created a group that was about unifying our school community. And so they did incredible work about bringing people together from all points of view, from all cultures, religions, to be able to have a unifying student voice. They also created an opportunity for a unity walk for students to participate. And so when I came to Edina High School, Mike Pretasky, assistant principal, come on up here. He and I talked about how we take this a step further. And through some really Herculean efforts, he started to work with a group of parents and bring Mosaic to the students and the parent population. So how do we bring parents together that don't know one another to be able to make connections about something that is universal? We all care about our kids. So I'm really pleased to introduce Mike Pretasky, assistant principal, recognize him for his efforts, and he's going to also introduce some parents that are part of this effort. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support here. And I just want to recognize a couple of people. First of all, Angela McGarvey is a co-chair of Parent Mosaic. She's kind of my partner. And then we have, and I can't see if Ambaro Ahmed is back there, and Catherine Benson right here. Both were kind of the inspiration for Parent Mosaic, and I'll explain that in just a second. As Andy said, post-election, the building is a microcosm of the country. And so it felt at times as divided as the United States felt divided, and kind of along the same lines. And there were some pretty hurtful things that were being said and done in our hallways, our corridors, our lunchrooms, our commons. And, we were talking about different ways we could maybe bring people together and help people be a little bit more vulnerable and talk to each other a little bit more. The notion that being that it's really hard to hate up close. If you get to know people, it's really easy to make assumptions and say hurtful things about people you don't know, you never have to interact with, you can wall yourself off from. So independently, 2 parents contacted me and asked me at that time, are the hallways actually safe for my child or my children? And one was Catherine and one was Ambaro. And in order to help calm and assuage their fears, I asked them both to come in on the same day and just walk the corridors, see how you feel, see how the commons feels, walk the hallways, walk the cafeteria, spend lunch. So they did. They actually walked together, which was kind of cool. I saw them talking to each other. Ultimately, by the end of that time, they had exchanged phone numbers. These are two people that would never have interacted before. And the one part that was most powerful for me was at one point I was supervising the cafeteria, and I looked over and I saw them talking to each other's children, and they had their arms around each other. And that was pretty cool. I thought, that's really powerful. And if that can happen in this space at this time, then that can happen anywhere. And so, bit by bit, contacted people, invited people in. Only goal is to just get to know each other, not convince anybody who's right or who's wrong, not try to change their mind about a thing. Just get to know each other. And it's been a really cool journey. If anybody's here for Mosaic tonight, could you kind of just stand up or raise your hand? So I want to thank those people for sharing of themselves, sharing their hearts, making some new friends, and I found that there are a lot of people who share this vision and this goal. And so we're going to keep going, and we're going to make Edina High School and Edina, the city, kind of a more friendly place. All right? So thank you very much.
All right, next item. Well, let's wait a minute. I think a couple people are leaving. But the next item is hearing from members of the audience. We do welcome community input at our meetings. We limit community input to 3 minutes. We ask, and by the way, I think that there are 9 different individuals that signed up to talk about Cattell. So we would ask that you try not to repeat what prior people have said. If you have complaints about board members, individuals, then those should be brought up separately to the superintendent. Again, we typically do not have board discussion about items that come up during the 3-minute public input. Instead, we will have someone get back to you to give you responses to your questions. And with that, I'm going to start with one of the non-Cattell ones. And I'm going to start by mispronouncing the name, but we'll try. Ianthe Zabel. Oh, yes. Welcome.
Thank you. That's pretty close.
I got the Zabel right?
You did, yeah. That gets butchered too. My name's Ianthe Zabel. I'm a mom to 4 kids, 2 of whom are at Concord Elementary. And I want to start by saying thank you for your public service. I know these are not easy jobs, so thank you for everything that you do. I came tonight because I want to just express my concern and disappointment that we got the email this afternoon from Ms. Prather, the principal at Concord Elementary, that she is leaving after about 2 years at the school. So I've only known Ms. Prather as the principal at Concord, but thought she was fantastic, and just heard anecdotally from the teachers that she was doing a great job in leadership and running the school. And then as I posted about it today, I was further disappointed to learn that Concord Elementary students that are in 4th grade now have been through 6 different principals. Did I get that right? Yeah, they've had 4 leaders in 6 years. Yes, in 6 years, Concord 4th graders have had 4 principals. And that was concerning to me. I understand that the school board only oversees the superintendent, but surely somebody in the school district oversees leadership and staff retention issues. Any other organization or business that had 4 leaders in 6 years would have a reputation as a place that people don't want to work, or that is a place that you go to for a short period of time and then go on to your next thing. And we all know employers in Minnesota that have that reputation, and it's not good for either hiring or staff retention. And that's surely not a look, I think, that EPS wants. So I'm so grateful to Ms. Prather for her service, and to the teachers, the amazing teachers and personnel at Concord who will, I am sure, gracefully navigate yet another leader transition. But EPS values include being accountable for work interactions and relationships and meeting challenges in the midst of doubt and easier ways out. So I'm asking if we can elevate those now, please, and look at what is going on at Concord. So I just urge the school board to, maybe it's not the school board directly, but somebody within the administration, to look at the high leadership turnover at Concord and perhaps at other EPS schools. I would guess that Concord is perhaps not alone, and determine what is driving it and what needs to be done to address it. And maybe there's no issue, but and I would close by saying I don't think we need a consultant to do this. I would think that perhaps exit interviews are part of a normal process for any organization, and so perhaps going back and looking at those exit interviews to figure out, is there a pattern or some other broader issue that we should be looking at as a community. So those are my comments. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
All right, thank you. Next is Robin Bischoff. And by the way, I'm going to try to get all the Cattell people together, so if I pause, I'm just trying to follow my number system. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Bischoff. We're here tonight because we all want the best education for our children. My son attends the Spanish language immersion program, Cattell, after school. I'm here with several other parents whose kids also attend. We are greatly impressed with the program and the progress our children have made. I originally intended to request a bus stop, but the Cattell board recently decided they need to stay focused on the language program and not providing bus service. So I'm here to discuss the possibility of the district providing bus service that is reimbursed by the Cattell program. A few things I hope you will consider. Cattell can pay for the bus service, which would make it cost neutral for the district. The way the Wayzata district has worked this way with Cattell for 16 years, it's a very successful program. They have 268 elementary school students, 98 middle school students. If Wayzata can provide busing for that many students, I would think Edina should be able to provide busing for 30 to 60 students without impacting the budget. If the program ends, busing and multiple new stops may be needed for the 30 kids currently in the program, and this would increase transportation costs for the district. Enrollment has been declining recently in Edina. These type of educational partnerships can help keep enrollment steady or increase enrollment. Many school districts around Edina offer Spanish programs, and losing Cattell will put Edina at a disadvantage that could easily result in reduced enrollment and loss of funds. This would affect the budget for the long term. Providing bus service will fulfill many of the district's policies. It'll prepare kids for a culturally diverse global society by providing a chance to learn a second language. It'll create an educational opportunity not provided by the school, which helps with Policy 105, personalized learning, and the responsibility to provide the best education in the district and the community. It'll maintain or improve enrollment with no impact on transportation costs, and that fulfills the responsibility of taxpayers, Policy 209. It creates a partnership that advances the district's mission. That's Policy 912, the district's commitment to work with other organizations to advance the district's mission. The Cattell program has been in Edina for 5 years and currently serves Creek Valley, Highlands, and Countryside elementary schools. It also served Cornelia until transportation became difficult. The program is adjusted to multiple changes in school schedules and transportation. Providing stability in transportation will allow it to grow and help enrollment in the district. Partnering with Cattell will create long-term educational and career benefits for the kids and long-term financial benefits for the district by helping enrollment. As the Cattell program and parents need to plan for next year, we would greatly appreciate a board decision within the next month. I hope you will carefully consider all the benefits the program will provide to the district and especially for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is David Bass. Welcome.
Thank you. First and foremost, I wanted to thank Superintendent Schultz. He and I have talked a number of times on this, and he's been a good partner and at least thought partner as we've been going throughout this process. The only thing I'd want to add on top of what Robin did a very nice job in articulating is the fact that these kids are thriving. You know, my kid is in the program 4 days a week, and she's excited to learn a language. And as someone who's taken languages before, I can't say I felt the same. And I see how energized she is, I see how well she's doing, and I would hate to take that away from her, and especially these other children who are doing equally as well. I also tend to look at the school rankings, and I see that, you know, YZ is getting stronger, their enrollment's going up. They're now ahead of Edina, and they have a program, they have this exact same program, and it is growing. And I think that's a draw. And I think not having this program in Edina is a huge miss. We want to be able to provide every and all possibilities for our children, and not having the ability to learn an important language such as Spanish, I think is a huge miss on the district. And especially if we can keep this cost neutral, which apparently we can. This is just a logistics challenge. It just seems like it's a no-brainer. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Megan Feeney. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you also to the board for hearing us out. I'm also a Cattell parent, and I also don't have a lot to add. I think they did a very good job of summarizing why we think it's great for the district, and no-brainer is a phrase that came to mind to me too. If we can keep it cost neutral and it's just a logistics issue, it just seems like something that's so good for the district. And I would just add to that, as a parent who sent both her kids to Casa de Corazon, the Spanish immersion daycare center, which is located in Edina, and there's a bunch of different locations, I really do know that parents were making the decision about where to send their children based on whether or not they'd be able to continue Spanish. And it figured into my decision too, that Edina would have that through Cattell, again, at no cost to the district. So just to reiterate, I do think people are making decisions based on whether this program is available. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Paula Kotruda. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk. I want to say a few words about me first. I'm originally from Romania. I was born in Romania in a period of time when Romania was under one of the most awful dictatorship that Eastern Europe had. As a child, we were offered a foreign language in elementary school in a communist country, and you had the options to choose between English, German, French, and Russian. And I chose English. I also had support from my parents. And as a result of this, I'm here now working as a physician and being fluent in English. So I think this is a good example of what these kids having opportunity to learn Spanish would offer them in the future, becoming better members of this society and offering something back. I think it's a great opportunity for them to spend 4 hours a day in a Spanish program, learning a language, then spending 4 hours a day in daycare, jumping around. I would want, if you give permission to my son, to read a few words. His name is Eric. He's 8 years old and he's in 2nd grade.
Go ahead. That'd be great, Eric.
En la clase de español yo aprendo a hablar y escribir muchas palabras. Ahora yo puedo decir que mi casa es de color café. Tiene un jardín en mi patio. En mi jardín hay muchas flores bonitos, árboles y arbustos. Mi casa no tiene ático, pero tiene 2 garajes. ¿Dónde está mi bicicleta y mis balones de fútbol? En mi dormitorio. En mi dormitorio tengo muchos juguetes, 3 peluches y un cartel de Harry Potter. En el sótano yo juego con mi hermano y mis amigos las 4 esquinas. Los viernes vemos una película con mi familia en la sala de estar. Tomamos jugo de naranja y comemos galletas.
Bravo, thank you. Thank you. So this is how much he had learned in a year and a half, and he understands all those words, he can write them, and if he would continue like this, he would be fluent probably by the time he's in high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Robert Schweitzer. You got a tough act to follow.
Thank you. I'm not sure what he said, but I think it was very kind and supportive of Cattell as well. Thanks for the opportunity. I won't be completely repetitive, but I have a second grade son who is at Countryside. I'll have a daughter in kindergarten there next year. And my wife and I have been thrilled with the education he's gotten at Countryside and the growth that he's experienced. We've been equally as thrilled with the growth that we're seeing from him with the Cattell Spanish Immersion Program. So I'd just like to give my support behind it. Hope that we can find a compromise or a way to somehow get the busing that's needed to continue the program and have these kids continue to develop. And I think the two programs are very complementary between Edina and Cattell, and I hope it can continue to be that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Michael Duda. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. So I'd like to just add a little bit on what we've heard so far about Cattell. And I think what, as parents of Cattell, we're really looking for is your support to help our kids continue to learn Spanish. Just by way of background, I've spent over a decade in global business. Today I did business in Spanish, I did business in Portuguese, and when I hear Eric speak, I hear a future employee. My recs at work are not looking for kids who studied Spanish in college. I'm looking for kids that studied Spanish since they were little kids. You know, kids that went to the immersion school in St. Louis Park, kids that went to the ones in Golden Valley. And mainly that is they have a grasp of the language and a grasp of the accent that's very difficult to learn at an older age. And so when you put them on par with someone who's learned English in Brazil since they've been at age 4, or someone in Colombia or someone in Spain who's learned English at a very early age, it makes a tremendous difference when they break out in Spanish and they have the same accent and they have the same command of the language and same command of the words. And, excuse me. And so I think it's just very important as we think about our kids and their early learning is to get that Spanish education or French education or German education or Russian or Mandarin, whatever it may be, at a very, very early age. And Cattell does a tremendous job. All their teachers are native speakers. They're from Colombia, they're from Chile, they're from different parts of the world, they're from Spain. We have one French teacher who's learned Spanish in Colombia. And it provides the kids a really amazing learning experience to all the different cultures of Latin America, to parts of Europe. And just by definition, multiculturalism starts with a language. You can't really understand other people and other cultures unless you can speak to them. You can't speak to them on their own terms unless you can understand and speak to them in their own language. And Cattell is entirely parent-funded. There's, like you said, 600 kids in Wayzata that the parents support. There's 60, or there were 60 in Edina. The parents are more than willing to support the program. What they're looking for is a little bit of help on the logistics side. We changed the program from being a morning program to an afternoon program when the busing shifted. And now we're looking for some help after school to make sure the kids can safely get to Cattell and continue their learning. Okay.
Thank you. So I believe that completes the Cattell speakers. We still have additional speakers, but I want to thank those people who came, and someone will get back to you. Next is Heather Teats. Welcome.
Hi, Heather Teats, mother of an 8th grader and a 5th grader who has a bad cold, so I apologize for my voice. And I'm before the board tonight to speak about The email went out to 8th grade families about a change in grading for math in 8th grade, which would call for use of the MCA scores in math. And I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right. If you exceed standards, you would get a summative assessment grade of 100%. If you meet standards, you would get a 90%. If you partially meet standards, you'd get a 70%. And if a student does not meet standards, they would get a 60% for that summative grade. And as it reads, it would say that if you don't like your MCA earned grade, if you're in the grade level class, math class in 8th grade, you could take your final and replace it. However, if you were in a 1 or 2 level accelerated math class, you would have no ability. You are stuck taking your MCA grade as a final summative grade. And to be clear, for people who choose to opt out of MCAs, that means it does not meet standards. That means you're accepting an F on a summative test. Okay, that was confirmed from an email from a Southview administrator to a parent today, that if you're opting out, you're accepting that 60%, which is an F on a summative grade, and you have no ability, if you're in a 1-year or 2-year accelerated class, to replace that. So there are people working with the state and with legal counsel to see if it's even legal to use MCA's grading. But take that aside, where is the equity of saying for the over 50% of Edina kids who are in 1-year or 2-year accelerated, that they have no ability to replace that grade? Right, they must take it, and if they choose to opt out, they're accepting an F. And also, if you're in 1-year or accelerated math in 8th grade, you are in a math class that will show on your high school transcript. So we've now changed the rules in mid-March about a kid's grade on their high school transcript. Okay? What I'm asking for is for this to be thought through a little bit more, maybe put on hold, maybe not for this year, until it can be thought through and to see if it's both legal, if it's equitable, and if it's the way that Edina wants to go with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicholas Cadet. And before you start, you brought a group of young students who played from 6:30 to 7?
Yes, I did, and actually, they have a spot they're going to talk on their own without me, so, yeah.
I just want to note that we had some students here from 6:30 to 7 playing, and they did a wonderful job, and we do appreciate your coming here.
Excellent. Yeah.
Are they in the audience?
There are a couple of them here, yep, they're back there, so, yeah. Yeah, I get to work with that every day. That's kind of amazing. Nick Cadet here, high school orchestra director, and I just wanted to bring to your attention that later on this meeting, you're going to be voting on a consent issue for the Edina 2020 orchestra tour for next year, and you'll soon find out that we intend on traveling on another cruise ship experience similar to the successful 2018 trip, which was both successful educationally and artistically. With this in mind, I wanted to quickly point out a few components of why I believe this tour is going to be an enriching experience for our orchestra members and greater Edina community. I'm confident that this tour meets all the Edina Public School competencies, as well as the national and Minnesota state standards in music education. And if you want a full review of how this trip meets these benchmarks, please let me know, and I will gladly present a lengthy overview of the specific details. For now, I'd like to outline 3 main reasons why I am advocating for this experience. Number 1, the tour company we have worked with in the past, the Simons, have been providing the cruise ship experience and exchange concert with the Rising Stars for many years. The Rising Stars Steel Drum Ensemble is on the island of St. Thomas, and it was created as a space where the youth of the island could go after school and make music as a way to combat the dropout rates in school and juvenile behavior. Needless to say that this Rising Star Ensemble flourishes today, and it's an iconic success story in the Caribbean. Edina has a rich history of past exchange concerts with the Rising Stars, and they're actually currently planning a trip to come here to Edina this fall. So what better way to develop a global relationship than to share a concert with them both here in Edina on our campus, and then again on their island as a destination stop on our 2020 tour. The depth alone of this dual exchange is a perfect way we can promote global citizenship to our students. Number 2, before becoming a teacher, I trained and worked as a professional performer. One of my first gigs was working as a musician on a cruise ship. And the reason why the cruise ship for me resonates so much is that it's an excellent way for any pre-professional performer to get their start. I was paid weekly with all room and board and meals covered, and I got to see the world. I mean, I got paid to do exactly what I love, and it didn't even seem like a job at all, but it was absolutely incredible. I advocate for the ship experience so that students can see firsthand that this is a possible pathway to employment after school. We're not providing free entertainment, and instead we're providing a professional internship performing for packed theaters, busy foyers, and crowded decks. Giving them access to this experience with the orchestra cruise is a doorway into a world they might not have otherwise experienced. Not to mention that we're going to be performing for an audience members from around the world, and this is really a way that we can put Edina on the world map. Number 3, and most importantly, the safety of our students. Parents on the 2018 tour agreed that the cruise ship is by far one of the most safest ways for a large group to travel. There is no dark alley that students can wander down. There's no bad place on the ship students can engage, and they can't engage in illegal activities as the ship is tightly regulated. It's a contained experience with an onboard hospital for any medical needs. And for these reasons, I'd like to strongly encourage you to consider this proposal for 2020, and if you have questions, please let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Dayan Hong. Welcome. Are you coming up?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. First, let me introduce ourselves and then tell us a little bit about what we do at Edina High School. So, us three are the representatives for the Council of Classical Musicians, which is a student club formed at Edina High School, and we're under the supervision of Mr. Nick Cadet, who just spoke. We're a group of dedicated orchestra and band players, and we perform chamber music to support and promote the Edina High School's band and orchestra programs. And as you heard outside in the lobby, we played a little hide-in for you, and we hope you enjoyed. So what do? We get together every Thursday afternoons, and we play a little chamber music from composers like Schubert and Beethoven, and then Haydn. And eventually we put on performances. These performances promote the band boosters and orchestra boosters, who help fund the music programs at Edina High School. As the Council of Classical Musicians, we really believe in the spirit of music and the way of life it can cultivate, and we want to help further that on for the younger musicians in the middle schools and elementary schools. And so we decided to take a stand as students ourselves. Let me hand it off to my sister, who will be telling you more about music.
Also, March is Music in the Schools Month, and in honor of that, I'd like to thank our high school concert orchestra and concert band director, Mr. Cadet and Mr. Kyle, and also all the other high school, middle school, and elementary music school teachers. So I'd like to tell you a story of my musical experience. I grew up in North Dakota, and before attending Valley View Middle School in the middle of 6th grade, I didn't know school orchestras could exist. And so, when I enrolled in Valley View Middle School and participated in the orchestra, I felt like I was in a totally different new world. And when I took out my cello in the middle of the school day and played with other students, it was absolutely a wonderful experience. And so music in the middle school and high school inspired me to practice and to love the cello. So I'd like to thank all of you here for recognizing the importance of music, and I urge all of you to continue to support music education in the Edina Public Schools. Let me hand it off to Luca.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Luca. I play in the band, in concert band. And so I think music is especially important in education or like throughout the school day, because there's the classic 3 C's in schooling, where you have collaboration, and I think marching band and pops are perfect examples of that. You work with the people around you every day to put on a show or to play music, and having that community is really, really important to both me and I guess everyone in it. And then a second C would be critical thinking. A lot of like thought goes into how you play music. It's not just playing the music or having the instrument in your hands. A lot of it is looking at the music and thinking about it as a sentence. You're looking at it as a phrase and thinking, what's the connotation? How should this sound? And you're thinking about it in more ways than just one. And I think the last C is creativity. And I think that's probably the most important one and the most obvious one with band and making music in general. It's just the act of making music and being able to express yourself through it. So in a world that mainly pushes for an educated workforce, and that's the only thing they push for, I think it's important to still strive for this like essential humanity. The people in the most endangered like societies and communities of the world are the ones that are also still pushing for music and creativity. They continue to make music and art, and that's what we receive. So it's through that expression that we get to hear about them. And so I think that's why music is really, really important in today's day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Geneva Fitzsimmons. Welcome.
They set me up really well. So, hello, my name's Geneva Fitzsimmons, and I'm here representing the Edina Band Program for Music in Our Schools Month. And we've had a great year due to the support of the board and our administrators, and we wanted to share some of our successes with you as we celebrate this month. First, a little bit about the band program and some things you might not be aware of. Currently, we have over 1,500 students enrolled in the 512 band program. All of our band staff work collaboratively as a team, and we meet regularly. You'll often find us at 6:15 Monday mornings at Jerry's. We like to think we were PLC before PLC was cool. We all contribute to the beginner program and to instrument selection. With fourth graders, we did that all last week. It's an exciting, magical time to see kids try an instrument for the first time. We all collaborate for our 7th through 9th grade middle school Solo Fest, which is the envy of other band directors in other districts. And we all work with our marching band. We are the only district in Minnesota where all of our band staff collaborates. Our marching band had a successful season. We played for the district opener, all of the home football games, the state fair and homecoming parades, and we presented the Band Blast, which is a free community concert. Our jazz band programs continue to grow. We currently have 3 at each middle school and 6 at the high school, again, the most in Minnesota. Our varsity band presented their carnival concert, which was a great way to make connections with elementary students and staff. The concert band was selected to perform at the National Band Association conference in Wisconsin to rave reviews. Concert band was also selected to perform at the Minnesota Music Educators Association in Minneapolis. And thank you for those of you that attended. That really meant a lot to us. Honors continue to stack up for our students. We have 7 students in all-state band and orchestra, which is a very, very rigorous process of auditioning to get students involved in that. We have students participating in MBDA all-state jazz and concert bands, regional and college honor bands. We have over 50 middle school students and over 40 from the high school participating in those. Concert and varsity band performances at the Lake Conference Band Festival last week. Coming up, we have High School League Solo Ensemble with over 110 entries. We provided tournament bands for state volleyball, girls and boys hockey, all while having concerts on the same nights. We present a middle school jazz festival at Southview. That was March 1st, I believe. And we also have a middle school concert band festival at Southview, which is at the end of the month. And last year we started a 9th grade band festival. You might not be aware that 9th graders aren't allowed to participate in high school league music events unless they're part of the 10 through 12 band. So we came up with this venue, and we have students from Eden Prairie and Chaska and Farmington and Rosemount coming to our school for that. Concert band leaves on their tour for Hong Kong next week, and we continue to do partnerships with college and community bands. The concert band performed with the Medalist Band from Bloomington, an adult group, and we will host the Gustavus Band on April 2nd. We have commissioned several works this year. Our middle school bands participated in a consortium, and our Ed Fund grant this year, we are premiering a piece by Libby Larson, who is one of the premier female composers in the world, and it's a piece dedicated to Bill Webb's legacy, and we will have 5th graders performing with seniors. We've expanded our summer band program. It now reaches grades 4 through 9. And these are just some of the things that we've been working on. But we know that this would not be possible without the support of the school board, administration, and community. And we know Edina is viewed as a district that is a cut above the rest because it recognizes the value of strong music and arts programs, as well as academics and athletics. And for that, we thank you.
Thank you. That concludes hearing from members of the audience. Each month, we do have time period for people to make comments before the school board. We thank you, everybody who came up tonight to make comments, and you will hear back from us. We do have one recognition of staff, and interestingly, this is a recognition that was submitted by a Minnetonka parent. The parent writes and says, "I want to let you know what a wonderful employee you have. Apparently, this person's son lost their jacket," probably a high school son, after a wrestling match. And they were able to find Mr. Lee Yang of the custodial staff, who then spent time with the parent walking through the school trying to locate the jacket. Mr. Yang also apparently found a jacket, photoed it, sent it to the parent to see if that was the one. The parent ends by saying, "If this is how hard Mr. Yang works for a family that doesn't even attend your school, then your staff, students, and parents are lucky to have him working for your district. His efforts and kindness should be acknowledged and passed on to you. Great job. Thank you very much." And next, we have a presentation from ISD 287. Welcome. And we get a clicker. We have a former school board member from Edina who is serving on the district's behalf in 287, and you're going to help with this presentation?
I am going to give an introduction, and Superintendent Lewandowski will share the primary information. But first, Superintendent Schultz, Chair Wallen-Friedman, and members of the board, thank you for having us this evening. My name is Regina Neville. I am a former member of the Edina School Board, and for the past 6 years, it's been an honor to serve as the Edina liaison for Intermediate District 287. So I want to thank each of you for the incredible work that you do and our incredible lead team on behalf of all of our kids. We know that it takes a lot of partnerships to exceed in the way that we do. One of those partnerships is the Intermediate 287 program. So I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Sandy Lewandowski, who's going to share information about the intermediate, as well as some information about our Edina students who participate there.
Thank you. Members of the board, I first want to express my gratitude for Regina's service on the District 287 board. This year she's serving as our chair, and we are very pleased to have that kind of seasoned leadership and, frankly, the passion she brings to the unique population of students that we serve in District 287. So thank you for that. There we go. Actually, the partnership we've had with Edina and our other member school districts is a lengthy one. Over 50 years ago, the collaboration was started, and it was started for many of the same reasons that it endures today. How can school districts in a common geographic area collaborate to meet the needs of their students, both from a quality standpoint and from a cost-effectiveness standpoint? And so we've really existed with our partners, our member districts, for over 50 years. Today we have 11 school districts. They are shown on the screen and ring the western suburban area. And we serve students that range from services that are really quite varied. We have a lot of students in special education, but I think you'd be surprised to find a lot of other programs and services that we represent. We have a very strong strategic plan that we're working on. The focus is on being a premier provider for our member districts, and the specific goal of being able to meet the unique needs of your students. And so that goal, that outcome was really crafted with a lot of time and effort. And the specific outcomes we're looking for is that you will declare satisfaction with how we're doing on behalf of your students, and that you'll declare satisfaction with the racial equity work that we're doing and the excellence in those service areas. I have a slide up that you'll see some of the key things that we're working on in racial equity. We do serve a very diverse student population for our member districts. Some of the key things that we're doing right now are working on having equity teams in all of our buildings. Some of the regional conversations that we're hosting on the relationship between race and special education and the disproportionality of race in some of our special education programs, trying to find and adopt a common language and protocol to engage and sustain some of the conversations that we know are needed about race. When you think about District 287, it may seem like somewhat of a difficult organization to understand. We tried to put together a graphic that helps display what that means. In every school district, you might find students whose needs rise to the top. They are perhaps the top 1% of any one school district because their special education needs, for example, are very complicated. And they need some considerable expertise to address. If you take your 1% and combine it with everybody else, we are that 1% for the region, and so we hope that is conveyed. Oftentimes with our school-based programs, the students that we're serving 6 hours a day, oftentimes those disabilities manifest themselves in behaviors, and we become the experts in trying to tailor a program for students and their families in that particular area. What this means is we know that we have an increasing number of students who have experienced significant childhood trauma. We have over half of our students in our center-based programs who have an autism diagnosis, and oftentimes it's a pretty significant diagnosis. And we have been able to determine that we've experienced a 250% increase in students identified as homeless and highly mobile or in need of emergency foster care. And of this population, about 3/4 of them are students of color. We increasingly are becoming a district that is looking at increased partnerships in mental health, because many of our students come to us with needs not only in special education, but in the mental health that sometimes, again, manifests itself in some of the disability areas that we serve, and you can see that in that graph. We also serve care and treatment programs that are a collection of programs that are either based in mental health providers or in juvenile correction programs. And so if a school district has a program such as that located within their geographical areas, that school district is responsible for providing the educational services. And most times our member districts ask us to be that provider on your behalf. For these reasons, we really are becoming a trauma-informed organization. I can tell you that we work with organizations such as Child Trauma Academy, Dr. Bruce Perry, if you're familiar with him and his worldwide knowledge and expertise in childhood trauma. We currently partner with both Prairie Care and the Amherst Wilder Foundation. We utilize a lot of supports that really target the knowledge around childhood trauma and the strategies that will work best for those students, and some of those are shown up there. So who in Edina receives these services? We put together a graphic that hopefully displays who is providing or who is participating in those services. You can get a snapshot look at that on the graphic that's up there. For kids, or students rather, that are in our day programs or providing some of our career tech services, our area learning center programs, we really touch about 277 Edina students, and you have a further breakdown about those students in your packet. If you look further down that particular graphic, you'll see the racial backgrounds of those students, the kinds of services they receive, and where specifically they are located within District 287. And so you can see how varied we have a touch point between District 287 and Edina Public Schools students. I think one of the things that maybe is best represented by the kids that come to us is we are that 1%. It's that student in the family who maybe has just moved into the district and has a diagnosis of severe autism and needs a very customized program that maybe best can be provided in a school that has a lot of support services. We're that support service for your school district and for that family. Conversely, it might be a student who has been homeless and highly mobile and is now moved in and living with an aunt or a grandma, and they need an alternative high school program. We can be that program for your students. So that's just a couple of examples. We also have itinerant services that we provide. You can see the areas for blind, visually impaired, orientation and mobility, educational audiology, augmentative communication. We have 4 instructors who come into all of your buildings within Edina and provide that support students service to students who are educated here within Edina Public Schools. We also, as I said, serve care and treatment programs, and because there is a Prairie Care partial hospitalization program located in Edina. Edina has asked us to be the educational provider for that program, so we send staff into that particular hospital program. One of the things that we're working really hard legislatively on is that childhood trauma, that mental health service that we know a large majority of our students need. And we held a policymaker summit earlier this winter, and we also have, as intermediate districts, testified exhaustively about this topic in order to raise the knowledge and the need for school-linked mental health grants. So I wanted to share just a very brief video with you that points that out in our work legislatively. I would put, that's not my music. It's nice though.
Almost half of the nation's children Adrian has experienced multiple traumatic events that cause him to feel fear and anxiety. 24 hours a day, Adrian's brain scans his surroundings. Am I safe? Is there danger? How do I stay alive? Adrian is in survival mode. His trauma has disrupted his brain's normal development and functioning. When Adrian gets frustrated at school, even for something seemingly small, his brain wants to fight, flight, or freeze. His heart rate increases, his fists clench, and he begins to act out. At this moment, learning can be hard because his brain interprets his surroundings as dangerous. There is help for Adrian in his new classroom, the therapeutic teaching classroom. His teacher and clinical therapist work together to support his healing and learning. As part of the program, Adrian gets one-on-one therapy, and his family gets support too. Teachers, family, and therapists all work together on Adrian's team. Over time, Adrian is better able to regulate through stress while he learns and thrives in school. This is good news for Adrian, but these kinds of problems around trauma run deeper than individual students. We discovered some pretty troubling trends in our region. For example, children of color are disproportionately referred to the most restrictive special education programs. And juvenile corrections programs most often serve children of color, while mental health treatment programs most often serve their white peers. We have a moral imperative to interrupt trends like these and get all children the help they deserve. Let's stop asking, what's wrong with that child? And start asking, what happened to that child? The leading experts on childhood trauma tell us that with the right care and treatment, children can get better. Adrian's experience in the therapeutic teaching classroom supports our approach. We know for certain that apart from therapy, the single most important factor for healing trauma is positive relationships with caring adults. Good thing our schools are full of them. However, relationships are not enough. Students also need a new approach to schooling, one that transforms how school and mental health providers blend services so both healing and learning happen simultaneously in the classroom. We fund what we value. If we want to create bright futures for all students, we have to interrupt and transform the systems we've inherited. At 287, we're already succeeding. Programs like the therapeutic teaching model and trauma training for school staff need dedicated funding. All of us have the power to voice what matters, and policymakers have the power to invest long-term in what we know works, healing and learning. Help students like Adrian become the norm, not the exception. Their future depends on it.
Thank you for your time. We hope we are leading the way for Edina students and all West Metro students in areas like this and in our educational programs. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Yep, all right. Let's just wait a minute there. Once you were done, the students are leaving. The interesting part is ended.
Okay. Gotcha.
But yes. Their hour is up. All right. Sarah, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just curious. I love how you talk about the students with the teacher and the therapist blending together, because we all know exactly what you said in there about fight and flight. We can't teach them in that state. Can you just give us an example of how they work together in the classroom and what that looks like for that student?
Yes, of course. Great question. This happens to be part of a two-year legislative grant that we were awarded a couple legislative sessions ago, and we actually stepped back as some of our staff took a look at the students and what they were experiencing, what their families were experiencing, and we said, if we could redesign, what would it look like? And what it ended up looking like is we have an Amherst Wilder clinical mental health therapist in the classroom with the classroom teacher in our K2 rooms full-time. So she or he is with that classroom teacher. And so the teacher does what we think teachers do best, which is to teach. And if a student starts experiencing a meltdown, if you will, or experiencing stress and behavior starts ramping up, that therapist can step in right there and help either coach them on some of the techniques she or he has been working with, or actually take them out of the room for a little while and again carry out that kind of approach. But that's just one part. We know the families of our K-2 students who are in this program often are experiencing a lot of life stressors of their own. Some of the families are homeless, some of them have other kinds of challenges within their life, like financial problems, court problems, and so there's a full-time therapist assigned to the family trying to provide them therapy as well. This is for a program for 18 kids, so it's very, very intensive. And then there's a systems navigator trying to get the family the resources they need. If that's housing, she or he is trying to find them housing. So it's really a very broad approach and comprehensive approach. We just started it last September. We're using the University of Minnesota to help evaluate this, and we hope the data will show and compel the legislature to keep it going.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing with
Sure.
us.
Any other questions? Yep.
That's a great question. I think both would be the answer. I think for with the right kind of treatment in this program, our hopes would indeed be that that kids would improve both in their mental health condition, but therefore it would also help them academically. A lot of these K2 kids are behind in their academics, but we hope with the right combination that would improve and ultimately be able to transition back to their local district. We do have kids that, especially in our elementary programs, who do transition back. That would be our goal. But we also are aware that some of the kids need very customized settings for a pretty long time as well. So we take it individually.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate your coming. Next is the consent agenda. Are there items that people, is there anything that anybody would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove the trips to Germany and Vietnam from the consent agenda.
Okay, so those are now removed and they will be addressed right after the consent agenda. Is there, make sure you remind me. Is there anything else to remove from the consent agenda? And then is there, I see that there's a walk-in of a gift from Creek Valley Elementary.
Correct. The Creek Valley Elementary PTO wanted to make sure that the acceptance of this gift donation to the school district to help fund their new playground be approved because the playground bids will be coming in April. So wanted to have this added to the consent.
So can I get a motion to add this to the consent agenda as item I?
So moved?
Okay, all those in favor of adding it to consent agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. If there's nothing else to remove, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Sorry.
You got that, Sarah? All right, that works. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. So, Owen, do you want these addressed individually?
No, I can address them together.
Okay, so then I need a motion to approve the math trip to Germany and the social studies trip to Vietnam.
So moved. My concern is, I think these trips are fantastic. They sound like they're incredible learning opportunities. I have a couple misgivings, and they center around our core mission in EPS and what we're doing. We are principally an environment that teaches in the classroom. And I'm a little concerned that we're overextending ourselves with some of these foreign trips. And we're in a period of belt tightening. We've got some questions about our academic performance. We've got some concerns with teacher satisfaction. I think we ought to focus on getting our house in order, and we're not in the business of being a travel agency, and I'm a little concerned that we're moving into that. There are other opportunities for foreign travel for high schoolers. I do like the fact that this is done during the summer. One might wonder, well, what about the Caribbean? That's a foreign trip. I see it, there's a line in the sand, I think, and what I'm drawing is that this is foreign, and the Caribbean trip there's some historical precedent with that. And I'm more concerned not with it absolutely categorically banning it, but more of a temporary pause and rethinking why we're doing these foreign trips. It costs administrative time and administrative money. So I think that's why I'm not real enthusiastic about those. And I see social studies could be done nationally. Mathematics could be done, say, in the United States. So those are my concerns.
I would add from a procedure standpoint, traditionally in teaching and learning, we get a list of the field trips that will be on the agenda. And the Germany and Vietnam trip were not presented to us at teaching and learning at our last meeting. I know we've heard about both of these at different times. Germany had been delayed, but Vietnam had never come back to teaching and learning for further discussion. And I looked back at the last March, February, January, and December's agendas to see if they were ever proposed to come forward. And I know Vietnam has not. And like I said, the Germany one, I believe, had been pulled in January or December. So procedurally, we had not discussed those.
So are you asking that those go through teaching and learning before they come before the board? And maybe before you answer that, do we want to know, for timing wise, do those need to be approved tonight to move forward? I see heads shaking in different directions.
Shannon, do you have a question?
In order to set up our fundraising for the summer, because we were planning on having a STEM camp to help with fundraising, and I'm predicting that $8,000 could be raised through that camp. If we don't approve it soon, then I'm not going to be able to get all the cogs going to get the camp up and going this summer, which would fund the kids for the next year. And we're trying to raise up enough money to fund kids that can't afford to go.
So, for example, if we approved it in April, you're saying that's too late?
That would give me 1 month to plan. And have a full-time job and have 4 children.
So I guess to go back to the question, which is, Sara, are you asking that this get, I prefer that these follow the normal process, so I would agree with your comment. The question is, what do we do from here in terms of voting on these?
I was simply clarifying that this hadn't come through committee in the traditional sense that it has in the past. I do think if we're going to have a protocol, it's nice to follow it. But like I said, I believe the Germany one, which I believe you're representing, had been pulled once. Didn't you correct me, Erica? Do you remember that? And when I was looking at, and Randy can probably speak to it too, when I was looking back at our agendas for the last 4 months, I did see that Germany had been pulled. I think it's Vietnam where we literally have not said this is going to come forward on agenda. I believe the Germany one we had, I should have all my minutes pulled up. I think it was in January where we pulled that one back.
And I'll just add that the social studies trip to Vietnam as proposed here was on our November 13th agenda, so it has been a while since we discussed that in teaching and learning.
And I think we had asked, I think we had asked, because Amir was still on the committee then before Ellen, and we had asked several questions about this because it is for U.S. History, as I understand. And so we had kind of discussed, are there other opportunities to do U.S. history travel in the United States, which would seem logical to me, versus going to Vietnam, which is a rather costly trip. So I don't think we had followed up necessarily on that since then.
I don't know if those, I remember this conversation, there were a lot of objections to the trip. It wasn't necessarily seeking information. but just outright objections to the trip, which is a little different, which I think, to the extent that we talk about it tonight, it's worth talking about, but it's not like there's just a missing fact. In fact, Owen, I mean, you mentioned a lot of concerns. I don't know how many of them tie into this trip. You mentioned like, scores, academic quality, and this is a July trip. I think we're mixing up a lot of ideas here, and the cost even, we just heard at our last work session that there's not an administrative cost that's impacting our budget that's of any account, a couple of hours from a district personnel input. So I understand the objection. I think I hear an objection to international travel broadly. And it's being wrapped up with a lot of points that don't seem to actually link up to it. I think the objection needs to stand on its own if that's what it is.
My concern is principally with organizational focus and discipline, that we're principally a classroom education institution. And in my mind, we're beginning to cross a line. And I'm a little concerned that we ought to know what our mission is and pursue it directly. And when we start venturing into overseas travel, we're now beginning to commit resources that are not directly staff time. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical that it just takes 2 hours of staff time to vet a trip overseas. Andy is, in the case of Korea, we didn't bring that up in our discussion at the work session, but maybe, so we have Andy, we have internal staff taking an hour or two. I think it's got to be more than that. Andy is spending many days in South Korea. That's staff time too. That time could have been dedicated to the classrooms of EHS. So just a little concerned about that. So I'm voicing my concern, and you can vote me down and just go ahead. And I don't want to distract the conversation. You've just heard a voice of dissent, that's all, and we can take the vote and move on.
Can I just voice a little frustration, to be perfectly honest? We just spent an entire work session talking about this to try to better understand everyone's opinions, their objections. And I thought we had moved beyond that. And so to bring all of this up again is fine, but if every single trip that is presented to us, are we going to have to regurgitate the same conversation over and over and over again? We don't have everyone that agrees, but the majority of us on the board agreed that you might not think it's essential to classroom education. I personally think it's extremely impactful for students. And I want us to stop having these debates when we don't agree. We have to eventually move forward because we're stopping progress in our school district.
And Erica, that's a valid critique because we spent, an hour and a half last week?
I think it's more like 4.
Okay, I've been processing it. So I took all that input in, and I've been thinking a lot about it. Made many calls this week, thinking it out. So, yeah, perhaps that's why I say let's just vote and move on, because I've had my say, and I think you represent a valid perspective, Erica.
I guess I would differ a bit that although we did have a work session on this topic last Monday, we did not come to conclusion or consensus. And it was sent back to committee for the work of the actual policy to be done. So I don't think it's quite fair to say that we've had this discussion and we've, the majority has agreed. I think there's still work to be done, and I think it's a valid point to just point out that, that Owen had concerns, and I think others have expressed concerns as well around the travel. So until we have a final policy in place, I don't think we have reached consensus on this issue.
So I do think we've reached a general consensus that we are in favor of continuing international travel. I think that what we talked about was the need to make sure that we had a broad spectrum of travel available for students so that students who couldn't afford an international trip could nevertheless gain the educational benefits of travel. And so we were trying to figure out and left that to the committee to try to work into the process. I believe that that's where we left it, but that there was a general consensus in favor of continuing these programs. I do agree that we've been told the cost is not significant. I think there probably is some cost, but there is absolute benefit to these trips. And we are not solely a classroom institution. We have a lot of things going on beyond the classroom, and this is one that's positive. I don't know if others have comments or if people would like to go to a vote. All right. All those in favor of approving the trips, the math trip to Germany and the social studies trip to Vietnam, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Name?
Motion carried. All right, thank you. We are next on to discussion. Policy review. Amir, I believe you are up.
All right, very good. Yeah, the one policy that's up for review is about searches on school property. Our current policy doesn't make any reference to the use of trained canines, and that's an option the administration has asked for with regard to the high school parking lot, student parking lot in particular. Our current policy also doesn't reference student vehicles. It references their lockers and desks for searches, but if there's reasonable suspicion. But this change to the policy would allow the administration to use trained canines to walk the high school parking lot between vehicles and look for any indication of a hit from the dog that there might be reasonable suspicion on a vehicle, at which point the student would be called down, the parents would be notified, the student would be asked to open the vehicle, and if they refuse, they may lose privileges to park on the lot or some other type of consequence. We don't currently have a request from the administration to use those dogs inside of the school property, near lockers or anything like that. It was a parking lot request, and the policy is updated to allow both the dogs and the vehicle external search. And it's brought to this meeting tonight to hear concerns from the board or questions about searches in general or consequences or what would be searched for, questions or concerns of that nature.
So it does say that we could expand this beyond parking lots if at some point that would be deemed necessary or appropriate. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
Because it refers to lockers, locker rooms, and common areas.
That's right. There's already a policy that applies to searches without a canine. Searches if there's reasonable suspicion,
Right.
not random searches. That's right. And so that's not a request from our administration to start using the dog or something for reasonable suspicion inside of the school, to look for reasonable suspicion inside of the school, but in the student parking lot.
But I understand in the past we have not had the use of canines.
Correct. We've not had, nor does our policy make any reference to.
So
Why are we adding, if the administration wants the canines in the parking lot and not within the school, why are we changing the policy to reflect that broad of a search ability? Why would we not come back to policy if at some point in time the administration says we need to do this? I'm just curious as to why the policy reads the way it does.
Yeah, so fair enough. I think the policy references the use of dogs in those other areas, like commons areas or lockers, even though that's not something that our high school principal is requesting to pursue at this point.
So I'll just note that as it's currently written, I would not be supportive of this policy. If you brought the policy back, limiting the canine search to the parking lot, then I think that that's something I could more easily engage into a discussion about. I would then have other questions about it, but at least it would be, I think, narrow in scope to what appears to be the objective. And so I would rather tailor the policy to the objective, and if we find that we need to change, we can then look at the policy again.
What is objectionable about having it be broad? Because those things are accessible for search currently.
Somehow the idea of having dogs wandering through the school sort of doesn't create, in my mind, the welcoming environment that we're trying to create. And perhaps if the students and the faculty disagree, then I could be convinced otherwise. But it just strikes me as creating an environment. First of all, it's beyond the scope of what I hear is the objective. So I think if you're going to have an objective, you should limit your policy to that objective. So that would be the first concern I have. But the second is, it just doesn't create, it doesn't create what I think makes sense within our school district.
So apart from the question of whether the policy gets ahead of the request, are there other questions or concerns about the request itself then?
I have quite a few questions. So I guess my main question, or one of them revolves around, I feel that, and I know this is policy and policy committee, but I feel that if we are going to do something such as this, which I think is a pretty large jump in policy from a trying to discipline students based on drugs, I think it needs to be part of a broader strategy. And what I don't see is what is that broader strategy to limit drugs on the high school campus. And to me, this, it feels like something that it can be effective, sometimes it's not effective, but are we selling that we're doing something really to combat this drug issue when there should be a whole broad scope of things that we should be doing? And so my concern from, and it, not so much in this policy per se, but just from what this means, is that why aren't we first trying to educate students? I mean, there are all sorts of things you can do to try to limit drugs in a school. I don't think we've done a lot of those, and we're immediately going like, let's bring the dogs in to sniff people's cars, which I don't inherently actually have an issue with, but it needs to be a broader strategy in my mind. And then,
But when have we been told that that's not going on? Because there is, I mean, there's health class where anti-drug use is talked about. There was just a speaker on drugs in the schools. I mean, I do think we have lots of other things going on. I mean, we have a principal who's come to us and said, and I think anybody who has a kid at the high school could tell you there is a problem with drugs.
and I'm not saying there's not. I just think in order for this to be effective, it needs to be part of a broader strategy, which maybe we have and we aren't able to articulate very well. But I think there's a lot more education we could be doing for students, getting to the root cause as to why students are using drugs in the first place. And again, I'm not saying this policy in and of itself is bad, but I think that there needs to be more work around what, as a district, holistically are we doing from drug education and prohibition perspective. So that is one of my list of like 5 things that I have to bring up.
So,
Do you just want me to keep rattling off my stuff?
actually, I forgot to mention something else, which is my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, but that if there are drugs in a locker one year, that may show up in a test the next year. And so long as you end up with that risk, then that's not something I would like to subject our students to.
Just a point of clarification, Andy Beaton came to policy and talked with us about that. The principal thrust here will be the dogs in the parking lot, not in the hallways. And so that was brought up.
But then that should be what the policy says.
Yeah, that was the first point. So the point that Erica's on now is about the broader scope. And I will say that Principal Beaton mentioned the broader scope too. In fact, his opening remarks said that he values, and they're already working on the education component, the supervision component, consequences, health resources. We did not get into details at that point about what is currently taking place, what used to take place, what could, but he did elaborate that that's a context and a long list of ways to get at the core problem that you mentioned that he values. What he came to the policy committee specifically for, though, was the request to also have an identification of drugs on school grounds enhanced, the ability to enhance it besides maybe somebody reporting that they've seen it that particular day.
Great. You had other points, Erica?
Yeah, I guess my other point or question is that is really from the legal perspective and ensuring that our district is covered from a legal perspective. and involving in the constitutional Fourth Amendment right of search and seizure. And in doing some research on this, I found that in the state of Montana, which I know has no jurisdiction over here in Minnesota, but they've had a couple of very recent court cases where the school, basically, the school was found liable for violating the privacy of a student using search dogs. And they said because the school had not shown that it had a well-documented drug problem ahead of time, that was the reason that they needed to bring the dogs in. And they felt that if the school had done some work ahead of time to sort of lay the groundwork to say, this is the problem we're having, this is the data, these are the facts, this is why we're bringing these dogs in, it gives a lot more credence to the case that why we're doing these widespread searches. So I think as a district, we need to ensure from a legal perspective that we're doing all the legwork ahead of time to protect us if something later on does happen and there's a hit on a car or whatever. We want to make sure we're protected from that perspective.
So as a additional point, there was a case that went to an appeals court out of Indiana that reached the opposite conclusion, that said it was external of a vehicle did not violate a Fourth Amendment search. It was just a dog walking along the outside of the vehicle, but when it alerted, that was reasonable suspicion, which prompted the necessary, I guess, cover, or the reasoning. Also, since we did start talking here as if law enforcement is involved, I should note that Principal Beaton emphasized that when a dog should happen to indicate that a car would have something controlled, it would be dealt with within the school administration, which struck me as perhaps being too generous, but I think it strikes you maybe as alleviating some concern that this isn't something that's going to bring in criminal justice type consequences. They're administrative consequences. One of them might be losing the ability to park in the school parking lot, but even that, he was hesitant to say that there would be some sort of a trigger and it's just automatic, you lose your ability. He was sympathetic to concerns about students who wouldn't otherwise be able to get here if they don't have access to the bus service or walking distance. And so he's put a lot of the context and second line of consideration thought into it that I think I hear you looking for.
Yeah, and just, I have no preconceived notion as to what a discipline policy could be or should be, or law enforcement involved, because that's not my area of expertise. I just, from a district, like I said, from a district perspective, ensuring that we've done the legwork up front to protect ourselves from any sort of litigation, which we can't 100% do it, but I do think in this instance, there are things, because the law is varied, and I know there's tons of cases, and that's probably the norm, actually, that the searches are okay, but there have been a few cases where schools have been held liable, and I want to make sure that we've done the groundwork for that. And in saying or doing that, there's a lot of policies written that are much more specific about what happens if a dog like sniffs on the car. I don't know what the verbiage is. And I feel that we, from a policy perspective, just put in a little bit of a generic paragraph, and I think we could do a little bit more work around the verbiage from a policy perspective. And one thing I saw other schools do is they actually notify students ahead of time when they get their parking pass, and they say, you need to sign here, and we now have permission to search your cars, and stuff like that. And so I feel like I said, I'm not supportive. I feel like we've jumped into this a little fast, and there could be some things that we could do from a process and policy perspective to limit our liability from a district perspective.
You said you had 5 items. Did you already cover? Oh.
Amir, regarding the legalities, have we run this by legal counsel? No, okay. So I would say that would be something we should do. He's generally quite conservative on these things and will guide us. I would think because you're on school property, I like Erica's idea of the signing something when you get your parking pass, because it is a privilege, and granted, you pay for it, but then you pay just like when you park at a parking ramp that says we're not liable for any damage to your car. So it seems like we should take a look at that. As for the welcoming environment, I guess I would say that I don't get the sense from Principal Beaton that this is something where he's planning to just walk through the school with dogs on a regular basis, sniffing things, and so I think we're kind of maybe overthinking that in our minds. I think, you know, if they feel cause and they feel the need to maybe search some cars in the parking lot, I don't see a problem with that, and, you know, you shouldn't be bringing those things onto school grounds in the first place. As for doing it within the building, I would think that Principal Beaton would come to us with more explanation about the need for that, or purposes for that, because again, I would think that it would be used in a more targeted, limited way. That maybe they know a particular place, or I can tell you the bathrooms, looking for things that would be useful to have potentially the dogs to help. I don't have a problem with this as it's written, outside of having legal counsel review it, and just make sure that if waivers are signed, understanding on school property what rights are somewhat left at the door for searches and stuff when you come into the school district. But otherwise, I think this is a response to a need, and clearly it wasn't even just, although we had community members supporting it, it came from our principal, so who sees the need. So I would say that I would be in favor of moving this forward, barring some legal thought behind it, or review, I should say. Thank you.
It's not clear to me that it's a response to a need if he's telling the board he's not going to use part of the policy. That doesn't sound like a response to a need. The first part does, but the second does not.
Well, I wouldn't mix those up. Perhaps there's a need, but there's also a concern, and so if he's trying to triangulate a lot of points, which have been partially expressed tonight, I wouldn't say that invalidates the point of a need. So if he's sensitive to the concerns and he's interested in a step that doesn't fly in the face of those concerns, I just want to make sure it's clear, that doesn't undermine the worry or the sense of a need for what he's requesting for.
But if he says he's not going to use the authority to search within the school, it's hard to correlate that with that he needs to have that authority.
Well, if you're talking about what's written in the policy and whether we should take that language out and consider adding it if it's requested at another time,
right,
I think that's a reasonable request. I'm not pushing back on that.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Should Andy come and address this to the full board? Lenny?
Yeah, that would be great.
I think that's a great idea, because we have been getting some comment from the community that people are a little bit worried, and we've been hearing some anecdotes about kids having availability to some substances that if they don't have access to it, they wouldn't be tempted. And I think that this is one of the drives behind it, so. Okay.
All right. Next item is school board meeting dates. There is a draft of school board meeting dates beginning in July. Each year, we do approve our meeting dates for the coming year, and we religiously do not follow it in terms of work sessions. So understand that in improving this will be our regular meeting schedule. This will be likely be a subset of our work session schedule, and it will be up for approval next month. So
Is July 15th set in stone?
none of these dates are set in stone.
I already had a vacation scheduled.
And we do know
I know
that,
summer's
we
bad
know
for
when we
everybody.
tried,
I tried last year to get
Right.
everybody on one page.
you did great work trying to get us to have a time last summer, and I think we ended up with almost no dates.
Nope.
Um,
It's always gone.
But we could do a Google Doc for the Julys, but it never seems to work. I see someone shaking their head, the person who would be doing the Google Doc. I know.
Still didn't work.
All right, well, we can look into whether July 15th could possibly be, I think the only other option's like the 8th, because we don't want to have it on the 22nd.
Oh, I did have one question. Are we trying to have a consistency of second and third Mondays? If you look at this, it looks like it's a lot of thirds and a lot of seconds. Or, 'cause I think a constituent asked me this recently, I thought you guys always did it on the third Monday of the month. But I don't think we have a standing precedent, do we, on that?
I think historically, we've tried for the 3rd, but then you end up with Monday holidays.
Right.
President's Day weekend, I think there are a couple of religious holidays that pop in here. And so while it starts at every 3rd, it quickly becomes every 3rd plus other Mondays.
Okay. I just wasn't sure that if we were trying to.
We tried. All right. Next item is the action item. Can I get a motion to approve the long-term facilities maintenance bonds in the amount of $24,700,000?
Second?
And Jody, you've been sitting here waiting patiently.
Waiting, but it's been very interesting. I won't be able to recite mine in Spanish, so maybe a few
Un
words.
poquito.
Yeah, see? That's what we got.
That's it.
Finance people.
The rest, we can do our numbers.
And-
We can
Yes,
do
we
our
could.
numbers.
We know what those traits
Yeah,
are.
there we go.
And Margot, we've talked about the background to this last month, correct?
December.
December?
Actually, in December. So we updated the long-term facility maintenance plan, approved a resolution to proceed in December. Since that time, the Minnesota Department of Education has approved the revised long-term facility maintenance plan. And so every other year, we do issue bonds as part of our funding mechanism for our long-term facility maintenance plan. And now Jody is here from Ehlers and Associates to take the next steps and talk about the process.
So what I don't know is, there's a report here that kind of walks us through it, right? It's in board book. So not to steal your thunder, but do we want to switch and see if people have questions rather than have a presentation?
Totally fine. Just overall, do you want to just explain the pros for doing this maybe, so that taxpayers understand why we would take this approach?
Sure.
Versus,
Just continuing down the path that we've been on.
Right. So you have a 10-year plan which identifies the needs and your projects that you want to accomplish to protect the investment in the facilities that the community has made. And many of those projects will provide benefit to you over a long period of time. So we generally provide a mechanism where you're funding those projects over a period of time through your bond issue, as well as some ongoing pay-as-you-go levy. And we kind of balance that out to make sure that the tax rates stay pretty level, and you can see that on the chart that we provide to you. So even with issuing these bonds, we expect your tax rate to go down a little bit next year, and to stay at that level for about 11 years and then go down again, so that you have some future flexibility for funding. We did adjust the project schedule just a little bit this year, and I know Margot talked with you about that at your December meeting after Finance and Facilities talked about it. And I should mention one other thing, the resolution that you have before you tonight is considered a parameters resolution. We've used that process with you in the past to provide some flexibility around the sale of the bonds. So the most popular day in the municipal bond market to sell bonds is Mondays. And so we have set this up so that Margot and a board officer will be able to take a look at the bids that we receive on April 10th is the day that we have it slotted for right now. And if they're within the parameters that are in the resolution, then they'll be authorized to accept that proposal on behalf of the board. And then the board would ratify that in a resolution at your April 15th meeting. So we can also get the bonds sold a little bit earlier on a day other than a Monday, and hopefully lock into some lower interest rates for you and your taxpayers. So that's a little bit, we've used that process before for you, and it's been
it's worked out really well, so we think it makes sense to take a look at that process again. And that's why the resolution before you tonight is considered a parameters resolution. It contains some of the same language that you already adopted at your December 17th meeting with the state credit enhancement program and that sort of thing, but most importantly, those parameters that we've included in that resolution.
I was just going to say, I'm working closely with Margot on this, and we're going to be doing that.
Yes, we'll be in contact the morning of April 10th. So.
On the chart, Jody, that shows the green and the pink dashes, and I think there's a little bit of dark blue, and then the existing debt blue. That's all of our levies, and does that include the referendum, and is that everything?
These are your debt and capital levies, which are spread on net tax capacity.
Okay.
So your operating referendum is spread on referendum market value, which is a different tax rate, so that does not get reflected here. So it is a large share of your property tax levies, but not everything.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? So I believe this needs to be approved by roll call. So Sara, can you start us?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Great. So we'll get the results on April 10th and be back to share those with you on the 15th.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. Sounds good.
All right. Preliminary budget approval is next. Can I get a motion to approve the preliminary budget? Margot. This looks like last month?
It does. There might be a few wording updates, but the numbers, the majority of it has not changed. We did have our budget listening session and received some feedback, some good feedback, which we're following up on. But I'll answer any questions that you have. I want to thank everybody involved in the process, you as a board, and this, as well as staff and community. It's been months' worth of work, and now, pending your approval tonight, we'll continue to work diligently in the business office to put this big picture budget into details and bring you the detailed budget in June.
All right, any questions? Again, we have seen this. We've been in work sessions on this. All right, all those in favor of, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sara.
I'm just wondering, Margot, and then the board, what happens if, based on all of our parameters, if, say, the budget comes out more favorable on a per pupil spending or per pupil formula? What happens with if we were to get an influx of dollars, or is that more than we look to save that for the future?
So historically, we've done a combination of things depending on the year. One is, as you say, we can save it. It certainly helps us as we forecast forward. What I would do in June, I'd look at the long-range plan and we'd take a look at how does that help us for 2021. Maybe we can be in a position potentially not to reduce if all the other projections come in on target and there's nothing else. So that's certainly an option. Some years what we have done is wait until fall, and so we can also see how the audit and the enrollment comes in. And then maybe there is a process for requests for an enhancement of some sort. And so we've done that, and we've also done where we have had a short list or a small list of immediate things that maybe need to be approved right away in June. And we have done any combination of the three of those. One thing I would caution is spending 100% of it, whatever that increase is. But if there's some immediate needs, it might be a combination of doing something in June, reassessing and like October, when enrollment and the audit are in, and then updating the long-range forecast.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions? All those in favor of approving the 2019-20 budget adjustments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, can I get a motion to approve the partial roofing bids? Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Margot, you're up in this one here. They all came in below budget.
I know, I like to present those. So, and we were hoping for that, as you recall, when I presented on the window bid, that some of our other bids would come in more favorable. Roofing has been very competitive, and so we're happy to report this and would ask for your approval.
And again, these are all entities that have been vetted and
Yes,
deemed to be.
yes.
All right. Any questions? All those in favor of approving the contracts attached to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Next, can I get a motion to approve the Infinite Campus subscriptions? So moved. Steve?
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Schultz, Board Chair Lenny Freeman, Wallen Freeman, and school board members. It's hard to believe that it's been 3 years since we converted our student information system and our learning management system. We've had a lot of, it was a foundational piece that was a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but it's already bearing fruits. I bring to you this evening the contract renewals for both of those systems. A little information about the Infinite Campus one. There's no price increase at all on that one. It's the exact same price that we had 3 years ago. Please note, we did add a number of additional services. As you remember, there was a little bit of implementation hiccup with the food service in the fall, but that seems to be working fairly well. And then we are using the system for online registration and a lot of other fees or a lot of other services. I included in the action item just additional information, and we did use the company or a consultant to help us do the vendor selection survey to review that it was appropriate to be able to renew this contract without having to go out for bid. So I'd ask that you approve that this evening.
All right. Any questions? All those in favor of approving the Infinite Campus subscription renewal, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion to approve the renewal contract for Schoology?
Yep, and so this is the ancillary tool that connects to our student information system, and it's what, if you have a secondary student in the district, they all know and love. I don't know if they love, but they all know. And it's been a great tool. This year, we actually were able to do what's called grade passback. So for the first time in my number of years of education, that we were able to have the teachers be able to put information into the learning management system, and that information came back automatically for the report card. That's a pretty Herculean, a big feat. The contract, it does go up about 25 cents every year for the contract, but we've structured this contract so it's a 3-year contract, but we have points every year if we need to reevaluate it. So it's a 3-year contract, so it locks in our pricing, but we have renewals every year if we want to continue with the contract or not.
That would have been my question, because the Infinite Campus is a 1-year and the Schoology is a 3-year, but you're saying we could get out of Schoology at the end of a year.
Correct. The contract is structured such that it says a 1-year plus 2 1-year renewals, and so we can renew after each year if we choose to.
Any questions? All those in favor of approving the renewal contract for Schoology, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have policy 613. Can I get a motion to approve policy 613?
All right, so this is the same as it was last month, and I'll just emphasize that it's graduation requirements, and it has to do with process of acknowledging some middle school credits earned at the high school for the purposes of the high school transcript. And previously, we had specified grades that credits had to be earned, and now we're just saying they need to be recognized on a high school transcript. There were other conversations about graduation requirements that have started, some of them long ago. They're ongoing. Some of them will come to the board as well. So policy 613 about graduation requirements will come back to the board in a fairly quick timeline. But I do recommend that we just approve these small changes that we looked at last month.
Any questions? So, just so I understand this policy, so that if we have compacted science as an example so in 6th and 7th grade, you can take 6, 7, and 8. Then in 8th grade, you could take, let's just say physics as an example, which would be a high school physics class. That means the student who takes physics in 8th grade will get a credit towards high school graduation. Is that?
I like where your mind's at. I don't know that it's time to give you a specific yes or no on that example. It's not exactly clear what that 8th grade class would be, but we do have some examples that are moving forward more rapidly. I think math is the example at this point, a math class that some students will take in 9th grade and get credit on their high school transcript for, and others might take in 8th or 7th grade. That's the easy yes at this point, and there are other classes that might fit the bill as well, and that's going to go to teaching and learning and come back. And if they have a recommendation that the board likes, we can update this policy. Well, okay, this is an example, but it would be covered under this.
Okay.
This allows classes from the middle school to be recognized on the high school transcript if there's a process in the high school. Let me rephrase this. This allows classes that are earned to count towards graduation if they make it onto the high school transcript. Now, what makes it onto the high school transcript is a process, internal forms, internal policies that we continue to have a conversation around. But this policy allows those processes to actually work, whereas before we had a policy that said credits had to be earned in 10th through 12th grade, and then we brought the 9th grade in, we said when we brought the 9th grade in, we started to say 9 through 12, but we used to specify 10 through 12. And so now we've just stopped listing the grades and say what we're looking at is your high school transcript. And then when it raises the natural follow-on question is, well, how do I get credits on my transcript? There'll be a process for that.
And so you mentioned math, so I'll run down that avenue for a second. So if you're in double accelerated and now you are in 7th grade taking the equivalent of 9th grade math, and in 8th grade taking the equivalent of 10th grade, or at least what some 9th and 10th graders will be taking, will those students get high school math credit? Or are you going to tell me the same answer, that those are great questions and it depends upon how they get integrated?
Yeah, let's have Randy help you.
You're up, Randy.
So one of the pieces that we looked at are how some other schools handle this situation, and we did get some insight from a sample letter that Osseo Public Schools uses. So we took a look at that, and basically what it would do is it would give, we would assume that we would use a similar process. So basically what it would do, it would give the parents and families options of opting that credit onto their transcript. So they would simply complete a form, cite down the information of when they earned the credit, what the letter grade was, etc., and then they would submit that, and then during the summer of their freshman year, those credits would be transferred onto their high school transcript. They could also opt to not transfer that grade and those credits on the high school transcript, so it's really a win-win situation for students, and we're holding them harmless for being a middle school student attempting a very rigorous high school level course, and assuming that goes very well, they could push that forward, and if it doesn't go well, hooray, you've attempted a very rigorous course. There's a good learning experience. Now let's get that figured out for high school.
I have a quick question. You said that the credit and the grade will transfer. Will the grade count in their GPA calculation?
Yes.
So, and just from a process perspective, so a family will decide before taking the class, correct? After taking the class?
Or after?
After taking the class, they would decide if they want to move that grade and credit to their transcript, and if they do that, then the grade would count in the GPA. So that's something families will be aware of via the form prior to submitting that.
Okay. And I guess that was one thing I was wondering if it needs to be clarified in policy, or is it fine to have it?
So that none of that
Being a
process is in
process.
this policy. The
No.
policy simply says that
It
For
says
graduating, you need a
transfer.
certain number of credits on your transcript.
Right.
And then it's internal, that form and the processes.
So I think that this change is great, because I know that we have students who have scheduling difficulties in the high school. And so to the extent that we are adopting compacted classes as an option, and I know that you kind of didn't answer that question. I mean, it remains to be seen, but within the math, it just allows those students more flexibility in building their high school transcript and kind of rewards them for, pushing a little bit harder in middle school. So I think it's great.
Exactly, especially since we tell students they don't have to fill up all 7 slots when they're juniors or seniors even. If they've got something on their transcript that they wanted on there, and they still don't need to fill up a slot in the junior year, that's a win in a lot of areas, because that's a very stressful year.
Right. No?
To your point.
All right. Any other questions? All those in favor of approving policy 613, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. We have information items listed here. Are there any committee updates? I don't think that finance met between the last meeting and this meeting, so there would be no finance update, and if it was, we would have covered it in what we just approved. So are there any other committee updates?
In teaching and learning, just to piggyback on the policy that Amir mentioned, we did have discussion around some credit requirement changes that we need to fix in the policy around capstone, and then there'll be a recommendation coming forward from administration regarding FIED credits, and so the board will need to discuss that and address that. So those were the big ones. We also had a little update on the pilot that's going on, earned honors in our pre-AP 10 classes. We got an update that they are working on that the teachers are getting some professional development around it to help them figure out how this works. There was discussion around what are the outcomes that we're going to look for that will prove that the pilot was successful, and it does not sound like we necessarily have all those measures figured out, but hopefully we'll get that soon. And then we also got an update on some map testing, but I think that will be coming to the full board shortly. So those were kind of the big things that we discussed in teaching and learning.
Sarah, did you say it is underway, the pilot? They're just working on...
It's underway, but it's not as though, and Randy, please jump in. It's not as though it's not at its full potential.
Part of what they're doing is they're testing out some different things. And they have written all of what they are calling expert competencies, and they are testing out those different expert competencies through their assessments. So the intent is to teach the standards and expectations at a very high level, and then the differentiation for who has earned the honors credit, so to speak, comes out through the assessment. So the level at which students assess at is how they would determine this moving forward. Now, what they are doing this semester is they have written all of these expert competencies, but they're testing and they're vetting those out. And they found a few of them that they have felt like these really didn't work very well. We need to redo these. And their intent is to, by next fall, be able to say to kids, now here it is all laid out, you can earn it, and it would show up on your transcript.
So I'm just trying to understand, like, is it embedded honors as in day-to-day, there's an embedded honors experience, an embedded honors learning, if not embedded honors curriculum, because I think this embedded program prides itself on the same curriculum. But is there a day-to-day experience that's different, or it's a heterogeneous classroom, but when they're grading the tests, they really keep that sharp eye out for papers that rise above grade level, and they just try to put a little embedded honors stamp on a test when they hand it back. Other than that, is that what's happening?
So they are teaching the class at a high level of competencies, and there's an intended curriculum and then a learned curriculum in any course. And what they are doing is they are teaching the class at a high level, and then when students assess, they have an opportunity to show their level of understanding and their level of knowledge. Now, on the assessments, the way they've mapped out the honors competencies, or they're calling them expert competencies at this point, is the level of depth of knowledge of thinking. So as they move up higher on the Webb's depth of knowledge continuum of thinking, that is part of earning that competency. And as they move over to the right, or over into application beyond the discipline, application outside of the discipline of the concept. So as you go up Webb's of knowledge, or Webb's depth of knowledge, and over into authentic application, those are the types of competencies that they're looking for through the assessment.
I guess my concern, I'm disappointed to hear it though, is that there's not any encouragement of those competencies as part of an embedded honors plan. There's not specifically teaching and giving feedback for something that's beyond the regular class. And I understand the regular class is college prep, and that's essential. But I kind of, in my own mind, imagine embedded honors being more than just recognition on an exam after having had the exact same day-to-day experience for weeks.
The students are being taught what those expert competencies are, so there's articulation of that. They're also exploring how they can use some of the flex time for additional time and support for students to be able to attack those competencies.
You see how we had talked about students maybe unit by unit or book by book opting in, flexing out. Are you doing embedded honors this time or not? You make it sound like there is no in or out. You're just in this class. But when you get your test back, you see if the teacher thought that you were embedded honors amazing or just regular amazing. And that's a very different experience, and it's just not at all competitive with an idea of an honors class. It sounds like it's completely different from an honors class.
Well,
I would imagine an honors class is a level of depth and complexity and rigor and speed and above grade level that would not be appropriate, day to day would not be appropriate for most of our students. Our mainstream class, the typical class, would be college prep and appropriate for most students, whereas an honors class would be something that's beyond that. And embedded honors, originally I had some hope that this would be something that could rival the need for an honors class, and it sounds like actually everybody has the same day-to-day experience. This day-to-day experience is appropriate for everybody. College prep, but appropriate for everybody. But when you get your test back, they look for indications that you get it beyond grade level, despite not having been encouraged and nurtured and given, small group discussions, not having had a pace or depth or complexity that was different from what would be appropriate for most. And I'm really underwhelmed with that model of offering advanced learning.
Well, I do disagree, based on the feedback that we've heard from the teachers so far, but we will be bringing our data and the information from the pilot back to the board to present it. And so we'll be excited to share with you the learning from that. And again, part of what we're doing is we're assessing this experience. We're assessing it with the students. We're assessing it with the teachers. We will bring examples of work and learning that students have done. We'll show you examples of students reaching regular competency and students reaching honors level competency. Anecdotally, some of the teachers sharing some of the significant level of work that students have done is something that they haven't seen in a long time. And so I'm excited about the possibilities, but we'll be bringing that full report back to the board.
So, Randy, when you bring that report back to the board, one of the things that had been presented to the board was the idea that there would be flex grouping within the class and across classes. And you just mentioned using flex time. So when you come back before the board, and I'm not looking for the answer tonight, but if you can address how they're flex grouping within the classroom or flex grouping across classes as opposed to using flex time, I would appreciate hearing that. Any other questions, updates?
Got a question about the enrollment. I'm a little confused. It's our February enrollment, the very bottom, it says January mobility. Is that right? Or is that a misprint?
Yeah, it probably should say February.
Probably should say February. Is that just a typo? So I just take a look and get back to us on that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll talk with our new student information systems coordinator and verify those numbers and get back to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Owen.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else, anyone? We've completed our agenda. Is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.